Apple, Microsoft, Google. The number of trillion-dollar companies that exist today can be counted on the fingers of your hands, and it's hard to find someone who hasn't heard of these. But what if I tell you there was one company whose valuation was more than the combined valuation of all these three companies I mentioned now? A mega corporation that existed before the birth of modern economics, the first company to be ever listed on the stock exchange, an organization that left a big mark on history and revolutionized modern trade and commerce. Well, I am talking about the Dutch East India Company. Adjusted for inflation, in today's date, the valuation of the Dutch East India Company would be, hold your breath, 7.8 trillion US dollars. The period from 1588 to 1672 was the golden era for Netherlands, where its science, art, and most importantly, trade were the most well off in the entire Europe. Traditionally, the Dutch depended on sea trade. The Netherlanders proved to be the best merchants and key map makers and began to trade in the East. The Dutch had a strong business culture and they believed in mercantilism.
Mercantilism is a way for a nation to grow its wealth by exporting more and more goods and importing the least they can. It's basically to hold the resources and wealth and deny to share it with anyone else.
The Dutch mainly worked as middlemen. They were not the ones manufacturing stuff. What they did was they bought commodities from East Asia and sold them in European markets, making huge profits. Their strong business culture helped them to have the fastest income per capita growth in the entire Europe from 1400 to 1700s. Sailing ships for voyages halfway across the world was no easy task. They were loaded with bulk of goods and traveled into Southeast Asia, and bringing them back to Europe was very risky and expensive. The expenses included for manufacturing of ships, hiring a crew, buying goods, sailing them back to Europe, and to make things worse, these voyages were extremely risky and did not guarantee that the ship would surely return back. Speaking from a financial perspective, the failure of a single voyage can be devastating for the merchants. The second problem was all the merchants were trading against one another. If you sow a large number of seeds on a small land, they would compete against one another and negatively impact each other's growth. They faced competition from other countries as well, and thus they felt a need to unite if they want to achieve a monopoly on global trade. Finally, in 1602, all the traders united under a single corporation and were permitted by the Dutch government to trade solely in the East Indies. Moreover, they were given many political rights. The reason was Netherlands was colonized by Spain, and the Dutch East India Company was a ray of hope towards independence.
But still, the voyages were risky and expensive. And to solve this problem, the Dutch took an approach which formed one of the greatest case studies in the history of commerce.
It is hard for a single corporation to arrange for the capital needed. Wouldn't that be great if they included the general public in it? Seems a bit confusing, right? Here is what the Dutch did. They gave the general public an opportunity to invest in their ventures. In return, they would get a share and equity of the business. What that simply means is, if the voyages are successful and the company makes profits, the people who possess the shares can exchange the stock for actual money and enjoy the profits. And they would have to suffer the losses if it fails.
Isn't that how financial markets work today? And the answer is yes.
The world's first stock exchange opened in Amsterdam, and the Dutch East India Company became the first company to be ever listed on the stock market. This provided the VOC with the money to carry even more extravagant voyages. They bought textiles and spices from India, jams and cardamom from Sri Lanka, silk and silver from China, and a lot more. They obtained inter-regional trading networks in the Indian Ocean, South China Sea, and the Philippine Sea until about 1800. The company bought these goods to European markets and made huge profits. They gained a monopoly on global trade and investors were enjoying the profits.
One question that might pop up in your mind is, where is the Dutch East India Company today? How did an empire this big collapse? And why not so many people know about it?
There were a couple of reasons for the decline of the Dutch East India Company. Number one is due to changes in the Asiatic political and economic environment, VOC had to back off from Persia, India, Indonesia, and other countries. The way the ports were organized in Asia, every voyage had to first ship everything to the central port, but their competitors were able to transport directly to Europe. Salaries were low, corruption was at its peak, and the improper performance of duties by their employees caused losses. And the final reason is the company had high mortality rates and there wasn't much concern for the crew safety. There are a lot of lessons to be learned from the case study of the Dutch East India Company. They laid down the foundation of modern economics, was the reason for the birth of financial markets, and gave rise to capitalism. Can there be a company in the future which will exceed the valuation of VOC?
The future holds answer to many such questions. But for now, make sure you subscribe to Credo and hit that like button. I'll see you in the next video.